Week 9 DFS Jam here on the Fantasy Life YouTube channel. I'm Peter Overzet, and I convene here every single Thursday at noon Eastern to talk through strategy for the Week 9 DFS slate, and specifically on Underdog Fantasy, where we have multiple tournaments, including the flagship contest, the Battle Royale. This week, it has a $40,000 top prize. We can talk through some of my favorite plays, favorite stacks, favorite sleepers, all of that good stuff here on the channel. And as we get going, we can also bust out my randomizer wheel, can get some fun prompts going as well to see how we want to, force me into some funkier builds than I might otherwise be inclined to do. I believe this is our first time broadcasting to X as well, a little simulcast on X and on the YouTube platform, of course. So welcome to all of our X viewers here. As always, we appreciate if you would head over to the Fantasy Life YouTube channel and join us over there. Subscribe. So many great videos on the channel throughout the week. I just finished listening to Dwayne and Ian's utilization breakdown from the Week 8 action with an eye toward Week 9, looking at breakouts, and certainly got some ideas for players that I want to be targeting this week in Battle Royale. I think where we'll start is with a normal draft. We'll just hop in a draft here on Underdog, get our feet wet, and then we can start mixing it up a little bit. I'll get the screen shared here, get all my overlays ready to rock. We can also talk about some of the game environments this week as well. Got some games with surprisingly high totals here. Let me head over to Fantasy Life and check out our odds screener just so we can get a quick lay of the land. I should also mention that my Week 9 column on Underdog Strategy is also up on the site right now. The topics for this week, I told the story about a costly swap decision I made last week. Talked about wanting to pick on this atrocious Bengals defense. Shared another offense I want to load up on this week, and then a running back sleeper that was informed from Dwayne's utilization column there. Let's see here. I am going to look at some of these game environments tonight. Of course, we have Baltimore versus Miami, but that is not part of the main slate. But yeah, some really good game environments. Colts Steelers has a 50.5 total. Lions Detroit, we've seen those games over the years have some shootout potential there in the dome with two divisional opponents, 48.5 total. The Denver Houston has a really poor total, all things considered. You know, we've had back-to-back weeks with Bo Nix and the Broncos putting up massive scores against cupcake defenses like the Giants and the Cowboys, but now not expected to do much versus a much better Texans defense. Chicago Bears, Cincinnati. This one's super interesting because the total really hasn't budged despite Joe Flacco sounding like he's legitimately questionable for this game with a shoulder injury. I don't know how this game gets to a 51-point combined score without Joe Flacco. So that's something I'm going to be monitoring. And it's actually something that I've been handling in BR drafts where you do have Jamar Chase often going ahead of Puka Nacua. And if Joe Flacco were fully healthy, I would be on board with that. But right now, I'm taking Puka Nacua over Jamar Chase with it being like a legit 50-50 chance that Joe Flacco doesn't play. So if we get Joe Flacco trending in the right direction, I'll happily, swing back and start aggressively targeting Jamar Chase because there hasn't been anyone in football who earns more targets than Jamar Chase with Joe Flacco. But that is something I wanted to note there. I'm really into this San Francisco and New York Giants game. Even if Brock Purdy doesn't play, I really like the potential for explosive plays in this game. And the 49ers defense is still just completely decimated. We also have Kansas City and Buffalo, of course. That's our marquee matchup, the 4 p.m. late window hammer, 52.5-point total. And always kind of a tricky game to stack up for fantasy purposes because you basically have, 4 key pieces. You have the two quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. They're both going in the top 15 of drafts. And then you also have Kareem Hunt Sorry, I'm not even going to include him in that. James Cook and Rashee Rice. Those are the other kind of two premium players. And then, yes, there are some sleepers, Kareem Hunt, Khalil Shakur, Dalton Kincaid and Travis Kelce, but it's kind of a tricky game to stack because the pieces aren't condensed. You look at a team like the Dallas Cowboys and it's so obvious. It's Javonte, it's Lamb, it's Pickens, it's Ferguson. Everything's really clean and concentrated. Not necessarily the case with the Chiefs and the Bills, which, I kind of enjoy for battle royale purposes because it does allow you to stack up the highest potential game of the week without maybe a ton of ownership. So we might be able to think of some creative ways to get into that game. But like I said, let's hop in here, get a draft rolling, and we can start talking through some more draft strategy for this week 9 slate. As I said, we have the $40,000 top prize in the Battle Royale. This is the biggest contest on Underdog each week. It's a $7 buy-in, has 48,156 entrants this week. And I am going to start out here with the 105. 105 this week is nice because you can get one of Jamar Chase or Puka Nacua. I think it's a much stronger first round than we've had in previous weeks. Rashee Rice certainly deserves to be in that conversation. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who has an ADP of 8, is a player we've routinely drafted in the top 6. Justin Jefferson at 12.2. There is a little bit of risk with this Minnesota Vikings team with JJ McCarthy taking back over. And you kind of see that hesitancy reflected in the ADPs for both Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and certainly TJ Hawkinson, who's completely off the radar. But Jordan Addison and Jefferson, obviously monster ceilings, provided that JJ McCarthy can play confident football. But based on these ADPs, everyone's kind of saying, I'm not sure if he is going to be able to show out on the road against Detroit this week. It's also funny to see, Bijan Robinson after flopping and letting everyone down last week. We now have him back up here at an ADP of 7.3. Everyone said, you know what? I think I'm good. I think I'm good after what happened last week, but I have no problem targeting Bijan Robinson. I think that game has some shootout potential there. Drake May in that Patriots offense putting together explosive plays in the passing game. So you could see things heating up there. And hopefully we get Michael Penix back as well. I think that would be a big boost for the offense after Kirk Cousins really disappointed everyone last week. So I am going to get my preferred player here at 1.5. I'm going to roll out Puka Nacua here. Feel very good about him coming back. He was a limited participant in practice yesterday, but all indications are he is going to be a full go. Obviously, nothing scary about this matchup at home versus New Orleans off the bye after the long layoff, getting healthy. I'm pretty excited about Puka there. Let's go ahead and grab Bijan here. We'll do a Bijan and Puka Nacua start. We do see the turn go Rashee Rice, Amon-Ra. That's another nice start that you can do there. And, you even get Josh Jacobs falling all the way to 9. So I really like this top 9, top 10 range here this week. And as usual with the Battle Royale stuff, I'm not going to get too out over my skis as far as making big stands on as far as these players. I mentioned the Puka Nacua over Chase one, but for the most part, I want as many of these top 9 guys as I can get, and I'll be mixing and matching them as much as my draft rooms will allow. We got Purple Yosh in the chat saying, being able to pair 2 elite wide receivers at the end of round 1 is awesome. Rashee, Puka, Amon-Ra, agreed. And I think there is some nice depth at the running back position this week that you can really envision scenarios where the wide receiver starts are optimal this week. And that does feel like a leap of faith considering last week the running back starts were so dominant. Obviously you could sneak Breece Hall in there, but James Cook, Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, you really needed to have 2 of those guys. All right, we're back on the clock here. Bijan, Puka Nacua. There's a few different ways I can go here. I mentioned running back being a little bit more deep. I kind of want to go either Bears running back, Chargers wide receiver, or Chargers wide receiver, Bears running back. Let's go Lad here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to grab Swift first, just because I'm guessing the drafter behind me who has 2 wide receivers isn't going to go with a 3 wide receiver build. I could be wrong here, but I'm going to go ahead and grab DeAndre Swift and then hopefully grab Ladd McConkey as this next guy coming back. But that is a funny 2v2. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that. Which side of it do you guys like more? Kamani Vidal with Rome Odunze or Ladd McConkey with DeAndre Swift? That's just kind of a funny 2v2. Not that there's any correlation with it other than the fact that those ADPs kind of line up. And when I am, spending my 3rd and 4th round picks, I don't really want them to be from the same team. I think there's certainly, scenarios where a Vidal McConkey pairing or a Rome Swift pairing get there, but you really need such high end scores from your 3rd and 4th round pick that it kind of caps the ceiling of the other one. So I would want to make sure if I am doing a pairing from a team that they have a really big team total. And I think the Bears are close, just in that we've seen the Bengals be so bad. So I might have to entertain some DeAndre Swift and Rome pairings. As far as Ladd and Kamani Vidal, it just seems like they are going to get up early and then be able to take their foot off the gas. So I think I'd rather kind of pick and choose my spots with the Chargers this week, as opposed to kind of loading up with 3 players on the Chargers, or I should say 2 or more. Yosh says the Jacobs ADP feels a little frothy given the split last week. Yeah, that's a good one. We should pull that up. On the one hand, the utilization dipping a little bit, but he's still also just one of the best bets for touchdowns. And when you think about them having, a positive game script against the Panthers, I certainly see the ceiling case for Jacobs. We also just saw James Cook absolutely shred these guys. So that's another kind of reason for optimism there. But yeah, let me pull up this usage for the Green Bay backfield, and we can dissect it a little bit more. I love getting George Kittle all the way down here. ADP of 22 falls to 29. I know he only had 12.3 points last week. His debut after the injury, he was completely bageled. But man, George Kittle in this spot versus the Giants, I am going to be clicking that every single time. Now we can decide what I want to do at quarterback. I could stack up Puka with Matthew Stafford. Justin Herbert's gone. I don't mind the idea of playing Drake May opposite Bijan, like a naked Drake May, but he does go. I think what I'll do on this team is just take the layup pick here and stack Matthew Stafford with Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua can certainly, score 20, and Stafford only scores 20 points and isn't optimal. But we've seen some of these high-end Puka games directly correlate with Stafford ceiling games. He had 27 points against Jacksonville, 25 against San Francisco, 27. And that's something I've been talking about this year and adjusting our kind of stigma for Matthew Stafford's upside. Historically, it's always been like, this is a guy that doesn't have massive upside. He's going to feed his top guys, but because he doesn't run, he can't hit that ceiling that we really want in these contests. But I think the big new variable that has unlocked Matthew Stafford's ceiling isn't necessarily Puka Nacua's dominance, but the addition of Devontae Adams. And Devontae Adams, how they're using him in 2 ways: down the field for big plays and in the red zone. So I think their passing rate in the red zone has gone up. Their explosive play rate has gone up. And that has directly led to Matthew Stafford having a higher ceiling than he's had in years past. So when I see Matthew Stafford chilling out here with an ADP of 34.4 in a good matchup, I'm going to be willing to stack him a decent bit with Puka Nacua. Let's go look at that utilization, though, for the Packers here, because I'm glad that Yosh pointed that out. And you do see here utilization score in week 4, 91. They have the bye in week 5. He comes back in week 6, 96. And in the past 2 weeks, the utilization really dipped down to 68 and 66. You can see the snaps go from 66 and 78% down to 57 and 54%. And that has really been because we've seen Emmanuel Wilson's utilization increase, 41% of the snaps, 44% of the rush attempts there. Both of them kind of splitting some of the routes as well. 30% for Emmanuel Wilson in week 8, 38% for Josh Jacobs. So I think that's a good point for Yosh to flag here. I don't think I want to be completely off Josh Jacobs, in any scenario, but does cap his ceiling and should maybe give you pause if you are taking anyone like Amon-Ra or Rashi over him. And maybe that does bring him a little bit closer to, say, James Cook in ADP than it does to Bijan. If you guys have any suggestions for me to add to the wheel for some funky builds or things you'd like to try out or would like me to try out in drafts, go ahead and let me know. A few I have on the wheel from last week is 100% drafted wide receiver with a sub 30% QB. That's actually something we just did there with Puka Nacua, 100% drafted wide receiver, and Matthew Stafford pacing to be less than 30% owned. The other one is inverting it. So an 100% drafted QB with a sub 30% pass catcher. An example of that would be something like Drake May with Stephon Diggs. May going in every draft, but Diggs not. Another example could be something like Justin Herbert going in every draft and then grabbing a Quentin Johnston or Keenan Allen with him. I have a sub 30% QB and wide receiver. So that would be something like a Jackson Dart and Wan'Dale Robinson, two players who are not often getting drafted. I have a skinny stack plus a bring back, so getting into a single game environment. And then I believe this was Steven from last week had me add an NFC, AFC South exclusive, only players from the NFC and AFC South. All right, let's do one more regular draft here. And if you guys have any suggestions for prompts that you'd like me to add to the wheel, I will go ahead and do that. Kind of looking positionally this week, quarterback remains fairly deep, and we have some kind of injury dominoes that will open up some interesting plays. I do think Brock Purdy, if he goes, is in play versus the Giants, and obviously Joe Flacco, if he goes, is in play against the Bears. Tight end this week is pretty loaded at the top. We, of course, have the rapid ascension of Oronde Gadsden, now the tight end 4. In some ways, this is incredible to see. In other ways, if you would tell me that it was week 9 and Oronde Gadsden would have a higher ADP than Brock Bowers, I think I would fall to my knees and start crying. That's how I feel seeing this. But Brock Bowers is back. He's reportedly fully healthy. He's practicing in full. And most importantly, he has shed the brace, which was a huge thing that was kind of limiting his production. Even though he was active and out there, that brace was really capping him from an athleticism standpoint. So I think Brock Bowers is an awesome click this week. I think if he truly is fully healthy, we'll see him be back in this conversation with Tyler Warren and George Kittle and Tucker Kraft as a top 2, top 3 option each week. So I kind of want to play the Brock Bowers stuff in advance. And then you have Travis Kelce and Dalton Kincaid in that really good game environment. Kyle Pitts, kind of a good sleeper. Colston Loveland as well. We saw his routes uptick, and the Bengals give up the biggest fantasy boost to opposing tight ends. So there's a lot to like at quarterback and tight end this week. Wide receiver, always a little bit trickier as far as searching for upside after, pick 33. There are a couple Q tags at wide receiver that are particularly interesting to me. Nico Collins, ADP of 30.6, Drake London, ADP of 33. Even with tougher matchups, versus Denver and New England, those guys are just way underpriced to where we've historically drafted them. And Patrick Surtain's going to be out as well. So that matchup isn't as tough as it once was. All right, I'm going to stick to my guns here and continue to draft Puka Nacua over Jamar Chase until we get some good news on Joe Flacco. Because I do think if Joe Flacco trends in the wrong direction, we're going to start to see Chase fall a little bit more and Puka certainly flip him. So I think, I have a lot more drafts to go this week. So I'm just going to keep taking Puka early. And let's do the purple Yosh thing here. We'll pass on Josh Jacobs and we will start with Puka Nacua and Rashee Rice, two wide receiver ones there for us off the start. All right, even though this is an underdog theme, I will indulge and try to wrap my head around some start-sit questions. So we got one from Cy DC here. Would you trade away Emeka Egbuka and Dak Prescott for London or Rome? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think both London and Rome, I prefer Egbuka slightly to those two, especially with Mike Evans now out for the year, and who knows what's going on with Chris Godwin these days. Egbuka, I think, is the highest ceiling option of those. So to have to include Dak to get one of them, I just think you're probably going to get a good Rome game this week because the Bengals are that bad. But I have such little faith in Caleb Williams right now that that's going to have a trickle-down effect to Rome. London is still a solid player, but he doesn't have the kind of week-to-week consistency that I think you'd like. And I think Egbuka with Baker just has a higher raw ceiling week to week right now. So for me, it's Egbuka for sure. So we start Puka Nacua and Rashee Rice here. Maybe on this team, we can start to get to a little bit of some more running back sleepers. I will say I do think it's going to be harder for me to get creative at tight end this week just because there are so many strong options up here. I think, after Dalton Kincaid, like getting to Henry, Pitts, Loveland, Theo, I'll have a sprinkling of some of those, but ultimately these plays up top are so strong that I think I'd rather get creative elsewhere this week. This is interesting. We were talking about the running back and wide receiver pairings here. Kyren Williams is going to fall to me at 17. I always kind of have pause in these spots as far as, if Kyren is smashing here, he's probably scoring 2 touchdowns. And if he's scoring 2 touchdowns, that probably is limiting the kind of true raw upside for Puka Nacua, So I struggle with taking Kyren Williams here, even though he is the better value. Let's see how we want to play this. Let's go ahead and grab Kamani Vidal this time instead and try to shoot for the higher ceiling outcome and say, let's play this as the Puka Nacua game. Let's say this is the game that Kyren doesn't score the tutties there. And I kind of want to get into a deeper running back sleeper for this one. Quarterback, obviously Mahomes is off the board, so we might want to build out another stack, or we could simply play like a naked Drake May there as well. The other thing we could do is a 3 wide receiver build with Rome and then work into a stack with Caleb. Let's go ahead and grab our tight end, though. We'll grab Tucker Kraft on this one. I do think it's a pretty flat tier as far as tight ends this week. We can even go look at our projections and see how close we have some of these top tight ends. Kittle, 13.9. Tucker Kraft, 13.6. Warren, 12.7. Gadsden, 11.9. Kelsey, 11. Bowers, 10.9. Now, this is actually DraftKings. Let me pivot it over to FanDuel to get the half-point PPR scoring, which is more directly in line with the underdog scoring. And then you see here, Kittle and Kraft, same projection, slightly more than Warren. Then you have Gadsden, Kelsey, Bowers. So mixing and matching these tight ends at the top, I think makes a good amount of sense here. And so now we can decide if we want to go with a more classic 2 running back build, which I do prefer. The data continues to show over and over again that 2 running back builds are dominant. We're seeing those in the top 1% at around a 90% clip. So it's not to say you shouldn't ever entertain 3 wide receiver builds. It's basically saying, hey, 1 out every 10 times, feel free to sprinkle it in. But the running backs on underdog just continue to project so much better that it's easier to find a 20-point score from your RB2 than it is your wide receiver 3. Let's see, did my running back sleeper go here? All right. Yeah. TD here took Jaylen Warren. He's someone that I wrote up in my underdog picks there, and Dwayne has been talking about as well. Has true kind of running back one utilization, but flying just a little bit under the radar. But we got another sleeper that we can roll with here. It's mainly just figuring out what we want to do at quarterback. From a correlated fashion, we could do Jordan Love with Tucker Kraft. I think that's in play. We could also just take a naked Drake May. You could maybe do a Justin Herbert with Kamani Vidal, with Kamani kind of catching passes. I don't necessarily hate that. I also think we could do Love with Kraft. We just did Stafford with Puka, so let's pass on that. Let's go ahead and grab the running back I want to take, which is Tyrone Tracy. His ADP down here at 35.3. Running back rank 14. I think without Cam Scatabo in a good matchup versus the Niners here, I like him as a scroll down click this week, knowing that his ownership should be sub 30%. And now we can choose who we want here. Because we have Tyrone Tracy in this lineup, I don't think we have to get too crazy. Let's go ahead and do Jordan Love with Tucker Kraft. I think there is some more dynamism coming from this offense now that Christian Watson is back, giving them another added deep threat. Obviously, Tucker Kraft is cooking after the catch. Romeo Doubs is reliable. Golden been a little bit of a disappointment, but I can see scenarios where the Packers passing game really gets going. And this is kind of a good matchup for it in that until previously, I should say, to James Cook shredding them, they had been a little bit more of a pass funnel, definitely tougher against the run. So I could see Love in the passing game get going here. So here's our second team in the books: Jordan Love, Kamani Vidal, Tyrone Tracy, Puka Nacua, Rashee Rice, and Tucker Kraft here for us in this second battle royale. All right, I think for this next draft, we are going to spin the wheel, but real quick, I do have to shout out our sponsor here, which is, of course, Xfinity. If you call yourself a sports fan, you got to have Xfinity, all the games, all in one place. They have every pro football game and over 1,000 college games, highlights and alerts, all in one place. You can even build a multi-view to watch 4 games at once. The Xfinity fan view includes live scores, odds, stats, all in one place and personalized to you. There's also enhanced 4K, Xfinity enhanced 4K. It looks incredible. And there's a voice remote. Just say football to access all of these features. Imagine all of your football all in one place. It's that easy. You can learn more at xfinity.com. Restrictions apply. New residential customers only. Taxes and fees extra and subject to change. Shout out Xfinity for sponsoring me getting to draft underdog teams here on a Thursday afternoon. What a beautiful thing to see. All right, we got Gunner in the chat. GM, what is up, sir? Welcome to the stream. We are about to spin the wheel here and get some fun ideas for drafts. I'm going to add another one on here since I haven't done it yet, a 1-1-3-1. And I'm going to do another one that I just was considering with the quarterback running back pairing. I think that's kind of an interesting correlation to think through as far as which teams actually, it would make sense to pull something off like that. And then let's do another one that I kind of am always intrigued by, which would be a running back tight end pairing. See if did I spell that right? All right, here we go. All right, let's spin the wheel. Let's get some inspiration for this third draft here. All right. Get the QB running back pairing. So let's hop in a draft and then let's look at some of these pairings that I actually think would make sense. One that wouldn't make sense to me would be Patrick Mahomes and Kareem Hunt, right? Those two are pretty negatively correlated. If Kareem Hunt is scoring goal line touchdowns, it means Patrick Mahomes probably isn't throwing for as many touchdowns as we're going to need him to. We can kind of go through these running backs and identify some that I do think would work. CMC is always in play with his quarterback because he's essentially a wide receiver. Jonathan Taylor and Daniel Jones, they score so many points collectively, the Colts do, that it is viable, but you still see Daniel Jones's true ceiling capped when Jonathan Taylor has those 3 touchdown games. So I wouldn't do that one. Gibbs with Goff, always in play because he can catch that screen pass. Bijan with Penix, but Penix just really isn't on the draft radar, so I'm going to take him off. Jacobs with Love, no. Cook with Josh Allen. Even last week, we saw Cook go nuts. Josh Allen only scores 22 points. Having to spend that expensive of picks on 2 of those guys doesn't make sense. Kyron with Stafford doesn't make sense. Do agree with Yosh here, and we were kind of considering that last time. Vidal with Herbert makes sense. I think Swift with Caleb isn't bad. Swift's been used in the passing game, has shown the ability to make some explosive plays there. Would not do Genty with Geno, would not do Chase Brown with Flacco. Warren I like, but not with Rodgers there. Let's see. ETN with Lawrence. I think you could do Tracy with Jackson Dart. It's getting a little thinner. I think this is about as far down as I would get. This is kind of the short list here. CMC with whoever is starting at quarterback. So that one's kind of hard to do right now. And we're going to have the 1-5. So let's get rid of CMC. I'll leave Gibbs with Goff. I'll leave Vidal with Herbert. I'll leave Swift with Caleb. And I'll leave Tyrone Tracy as an emergency option with Jackson Dart. But this is kind of like a good exercise to do real quickly where it's one of those correlations that's a little bit quirky. And so you really need to be contextual with it and make sure that the both price and the style or the archetype of the player makes sense for stacking up a quarterback with a running back. Yosh says Ramondre has a toe issue. May and Henderson. I know, man. I like that one would be awesome. Like in theory, like just who Trevion Henderson is this explosive pass catcher paired with Drake May. But just everything we've seen from the Patriots, including them this week saying they're in the market for a running back right now. That's another very difficult sell for me, but I will see what the coach speak is on their running back situation as we head into the week. If they are talking about Ramondre being limited, I'll be very curious how they start talking about their backfield. All right, guys, I'm sorry. We just keep clicking Puka Nacua over and over again. Let's do Puka Nacua here again. I think Puka should be the 1-3 on this slate. For me, it's CMC, JT, and then Puka. So I'm just going to select a ton of Puka. Let's see here. We know we're going to do a running back and quarterback pairing. We just did a Rice in Puka. We've been talking about the Jacob stuff. Let's do Justin Jefferson here. Let's say that game gets going. Let's say that JJ McCarthy is competent. And we'll get a pairing that I think will be a little bit unique here. One thing to look at is where ADPs line up. So you see Puka has an ADP of 5 and Justin Jefferson has an ADP of 12. So Puka's ADP is typically going to be paired with guys like Rashee Rice, maybe Amon-Ra St. Brown. The 12 is on the opposite side of the board. So Justin Jefferson is often going to be paired with Jonathan Taylor, with Christian McCaffrey. And so here is a chance to pull up a guy if you do think Jefferson is in the same tier as Amon-Ra and Rice, which I think we could have that debate. As a player, he surely is, but in this iteration of the offense, maybe not. But I still like the idea of getting some combos that the field won't necessarily get funneled to. So we'll pull up Justin Jefferson here with Puka Nacua. Jordan says, GM, what is up? Yosh talking about Henderson saving it for the 12 persons. This is a really good note and something to think. Like if you have that fancy play or that super sleeper, I would say instead of trying to chase it in the 6 persons, go play in the 12 person drafts where 72 players are drafted. Some weeks you'll have the 12 person play hit in a massive way. Like Troy Franklin's a really good example of that. Last week he goes off for 27 points. I was mainly, not drafting him in the 6 persons, but I did draft him in a 12 person draft. Occasionally you'll get that super sleeper that makes an impact in the 36 persons. But if there is a fringe play you like, it is better to draft it in that other format. What's up, Pat? How are you doing? So I got to remember here, our prompt for this one is a quarterback running back pairing. And before this draft started, we really kind of narrowed the list as far as which ones we thought made the most sense to do this with. Let's go ahead and lock up Vidal, and we'll go Vidal and Justin Herbert here. And even if we got Crutches here, even if Crutches takes Herbert, we can still grab Swift and pivot to Caleb as well. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and grab Herbert here, and this will complete our quarterback running back stack. And the story this one tells is basically, I guess you have two outs to getting there, right? The first out is just the Chargers score a ton of points, and there's room both through the air and on the ground for these guys to eat. The other way it gets home, and probably more realistically, is that Kamani Vidal catches a passing touchdown. You know, Justin Herbert throws for 4 TDs, one of them's to Vidal, you know, something like that. Then you could really see that starting to cook. And the nice thing about doing it with Herbert and Vidal, they have a 26.5 point team total. So that's a nice team total there as I scan the slate. Detroit is higher at 28.5, Chicago at 27.25, Packers at 29. Colts are identical there. Rams at 28.75. So they're right up there in the top 5 for team totals. I mean, they're just a smidge below the Chiefs as well. So that's an offense I am comfortable with this correlation. What's up, Steven? So on this one, we have a running back and tight end selection still left to make. We could perhaps entertain the Herbert, Kamani Vidal, Gadsden stack on this, although it will be very hard for me to pass on Kittle if he's there. I like Gadsden this week, but I just do think there's a significant gap here. You can see in our projections, 11.4 to 9.6. These are the Run the Sims projections up here. I have Kittle 13.75 to 10.54. The correlation chews up some of that ground. But man, it's just Kittle does go, so I don't even have to sweat that. Let's go ahead. I'm going to tack it on and get the Gadsden play here. I don't need to do Gadsden because Crutches already has his tight end, so I can get my other running back play here. Let's go ahead and grab DeAndre Swift. And then the nice thing about this lineup is I would say in general, this has more 100% owned plays on it as far as there's not too many unique levers I'm pulling, but I think this construction is unique enough in that there's just not going to be a ton of Herbert, Vidal, Oronde Gadsden teams. So we'll go ahead and try that one out here. In this final squad, of course, the Chargers, Herbert, Vidal, Gadsden, and then we have DeAndre Swift as our running back 2, and Puka Nacua and Justin Jefferson as our top 2 wide receivers. All right, let's spin the wheel, do another one. If you guys have any suggestions for the wheel, feel free to let me know. Happy to add those on. All right, this is a fun one. It's going to be a sub 30% quarterback and sub 30% wide receiver. So let me hop in a draft, and then we can kind of survey where that cutoff generally is. For quarterback, sub 30% is generally just outside the top 7 or 8 quarterbacks. So, you know, QB7 on this slate is Stafford. So let's say anything after Stafford. So from Love, Caleb, Dart, Nix, Purdy, Lawrence, etc. And then for wide receivers, you know, we're going to basically be looking like after Worthy is going to be sub 30%. So Diggs, Hunter, Higgins, Shakir, Olave, Keenan. Pat Moore asked, was the double stack to prompt, or are you more open to those builds in BR? No, the prompt was quarterback with running back. One of the things with stacking is I'm always more willing to lean into additional stacks when it involves the tight end, right? Because the tight end scores you need on a week to win is often anywhere from 10 to 15 points. And the reason you shy away from stacking or double stacking is because it caps that ceiling upside, right? Like if Jamar Chase is going for 30, T. Higgins is probably not going for more than 15. And at wide receiver position, you're going to need more than 15 from your wide receiver to win. But at tight end, you can have a wide receiver go nuclear, a running back go nuclear, and just get enough from your tight end to still win a tournament. So the fact that I was already going Herbert with Vidal, knowing that Herbert would have to throw multiple touchdowns to be the optimal quarterback, I didn't have any problem tossing in the tight end there. But I should also mention Pat Moore's referencing a show I did on my YouTube channel. It is available only for YouTube members, but I do a show called After Dark. And I talked with a really sharp player, Glenn, who works on for ETR and the solver. And he's been having a ton of success in these games. And he's been even a little more pro stacking than even I default to. So if you want more conversation, I highly recommend checking out that video with Glenn. Let me remind myself what I'm doing here. A sub 30% quarterback and wide receiver. I have two ideas that I want to put in my back pocket for this one, but we know we will be focused on running back, wide receiver, tight end, and leaving those two spots open. All right, we got Samuel with a start sit question here. DJ Moore, Jacoby Myers, or Bam Knight? Jeez. I don't know how you can touch Myers right now, truthfully. I'm going to need to go look at our start set, our rankings for this one. My gut says DJ Moore, but even him, I was writing up and he's still not even separating from Olamide Zaccheaus. Bam Knight is probably your guy versus Dallas on Monday night. Dallas has been getting shredded. They just got toasted by J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey. I think the highest floor play there is probably Bam Knight. And Imara DeMarcado has been banged up. They released Michael Carter. I think it's definitely Bam Knight. Are we seriously going to get another Puka Nacua team? Are you guys okay with me going 4 for 4 on Puka Nacua? All right, we'll do Puka Nacua, and then let's do another kind of reach across to for a different pairing. We'll do James Cook, because we know we're going to do a quarterback and wide receiver pairing. So I want this next pick to be a running back and a tight end, and then we can do a sneaky quarterback wide receiver stack. But same deal with the Jefferson thing. James Cook has an ADP of 13, which means he's primarily going to be paired with CMC and Taylor. Won't often be paired with James Cook unless someone's pulling him up like that. So we'll go ahead and reach again for hopefully a unique combination there. Man, look at all these Bam questions. Should I flex Bam? Jones Sr. Who? I feel like I'm going crazy. Who is Jones Sr.? Who the hell is Jones Sr. or Kareem Hunt? I have Jacobs and Achane starting. Honestly, I'd play Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is going to be the primary rusher. We're probably, or actually definitely not going to have Isaiah Pacheco this week. And that has the highest total on the week. I mean, Kareem Hunt is almost a lock for a touchdown. Okay, Aaron Jones, baby. Yeah, no, Kareem Hunt for sure. I like Jones, but he's going to be walking back into a 50-50 split with Jordan Mason. We've already discussed some of the risks with J.J. McCarthy at quarterback. The Lions, a little bit easier to throw on than they are to run on. I think you're going to probably want to see a weak ramp up for Aaron Jones, whereas there's basically zero questions about Kareem Hunt's role this week. All right, running back and tight end here. Let's see. All right, I know what I want to do with my quarterback wide receiver pairing. So I'm going to try to set us up here. I'm going to take Brock Bowers at tight end, and then let's go ahead and let's do the running back wide receiver pairing here. We'll do Kyren and Puka. We shied away from it in a previous draft. We're going to lean into it here. Looking at their team total, 28.75 team total, we can certainly have scenarios where, Kyren gets to 20 points, Puka Nacua gets to 23, 24 points, and those pieces play in the winning lineup. It's just, threading a slightly tighter needle as far as needing both of them to put up like 80th percentile scores and not preventing the other, from getting there. But let's see. I'll see if I can pull off my sneaky quarterback wide receiver stack here. I have a few options. We'll see what falls to us. Colin has a suggestion here. He says, finished 7th in the hurry up last week. My best finish to date. Congratulations. Had both Nico and London swap to Tet and Waddle. The double swap. Prompt could be take 2 Q tags. Yeah, that's a good one. We can definitely do that. There's a couple good Q tags this week as well. All right, there goes Dart. So Dart Wan'Dale Robinson was going to be one of my options for a sub 30% quarterback and a sub 30% wide receiver. But it wasn't my main idea. My main idea is kind of gross. This is interesting. You don't see this too often from the 5-hole Lucky Man 70. And I will say, if you are going to do 2 tight ends like Lucky Man 70 did here with Kraft and Kittle, you want a username like Lucky Man 70, because that over a large sample is going to be a losing strategy. But who needs strategy if you're a lucky man? All right, let's see what he does here. He goes Higgins. All right, I believe I can do what I wanted to attempt here. And this one's going to be kind of gross because Trevor Lawrence has not been very good this year. But I think this is a breakout week for Travis Hunter. And I mean, you could argue he already broke out before the bye for 20 points. There's nothing scary about the Raiders defense. And if I'm looking for a sub 30% quarterback here, Trevor Lawrence certainly qualifies right now as quarterback 13. So if we're hitting a ceiling game from Travis Hunter, and then Trevor Lawrence can certainly come along for the ride. And then I am playing this as a bit of a game stack here with Brock Bowers on the bring back. So that is one of the ways I like to lean into correlation. Like if I'm already kind of with thinner plays, I'm saying, hey, this game gets nutty. And that game environment is what allows these guys to end up in the optimal lineup. So our sub 30% quarterback, Trevor Lawrence to Travis Hunter, we bring it back with Brock Bowers. And then we play both Rams players, Kyron and Puka, and James Cook. And so this is an instance of saying, hey, we essentially have to get 3 things right for this lineup. Jags, Raiders, Cooks, the Rams offense, Cooks, and James Cook, Cooks. And I promise I wasn't setting all that up to get to a James Cooks joke. It just worked out like that. But yeah, I like how this lineup works and certainly has enough low-owned pieces to be very unique with the Lawrence and Hunter stacks there. Man, I don't think I have the stomach for this one. Dave saying Shaheed and Shuck. Man, I've been really thinking about like the Tyler Shuck to Rattler, the vice versa, Rattler to Shuck dynamic. And I thought Dwayne and Ian had a good conversation about it, and Dwayne wrote about it in the utilization report this week. But there's some legit downside in going from Rattler to Shuck. And that was the thing that was kind of surprising about the benching, is that Rattler, he wasn't playing great, but he wasn't playing awful. He wasn't like Dylan Gabriel level bad. And Dwayne has actually knocked down almost all of the Saints players in his rest of season rankings with this move. So this is all to say, if I did want to play Shaheed this week because I thought he could get loose for a deep ball, I would just want to play him as a one-off and not really stack him with Tyler Shuck. I just think in his first career start versus the Rams on the road, I really have a hard time envisioning him getting to 25 points. All right, let's spin the wheel here again. All right, what do we got? 100% drafted quarterback with a sub 30% pass catcher. Okay, so this is the inverse here. And a 100% drafted quarterback is going to be in the top 6 here. So we can go ahead and look at those options. So it'd be Mahomes, Allen, Drake May, Herbert, Daniel Jones, Jared Goff. That would be the 6 there. And I'm going to even take Jared Goff out just because he might even be less than 100%. So then I'm looking for wide receivers who will be less than 100% drafted. Less than 30% drafted on these teams. So Chiefs, Xavier Worthy's close. Patrick Mahomes to Xavier Worthy's close. I don't know if that fulfills the spirit of the prompt. For the Bills, Shakir certainly qualifies with an ADP of 35.1. For the Patriots, Diggs, I think, is very close along with Worthy. I think he probably qualifies. Herbert has 2 that would qualify. It'd be Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston with Herbert. And then Daniel Jones. Let's see. Pittman with an ADP of 29.1 doesn't qualify, but Josh Downs would. Josh Downs would qualify here. And I did just notice he missed practice on Wednesday, so I will flag that. And then we have the 101 here. For whatever reason, I've done about 20 drafts so far, and I'm just going to show you real quick before I make my pick. I have just been ending up with heaps of Christian McCaffrey. For whatever reason. Some rooms he falls to, pick 104 for me, 103. That is a long way of saying I'm going to go ahead and take a Jonathan Taylor share here. And I was just going to show you my exposures here. You can see, Christian McCaffrey I have on 30% of my teams and Jonathan Taylor at 14%. And so it's still very early in the drafting window for me, but I'm going to start grabbing some Jonathan Taylor there. One thing I will do, though, is I will remove Daniel Jones and Josh Downs. I think on a Jonathan Taylor team, that is not going to be the 100% drafted quarterback with sub 30% patch catcher that I want to play into. All right, we have a question here from Samuel. His wide receivers are Sutton, Jawan Jennings, DJ Moore, and Jacoby Myers. My running backs are Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bucky Irving, Zach Charbonnet, and Bam Knight. I really need a great wide receiver. What would you offer to get a top 10 wide receiver? Man, those questions are so hard to know because it's so dependent on what your opponents are like, what their rosters are like. But we might be able to cook up some sleepers for you here. Let's see. Let's go ahead. Let's grab Josh Allen because I think his wide receiver options are a little bit more attractive for a sub 30%. Let's do Josh Allen here. And we can maybe plan on Allen with either Shakir or Keon Coleman. And we are back here. You know who we haven't done yet? We've done so much Puka. Let's do a Devontae Adams here now in playing the other part of that passing game. So we'll start Josh Allen, Jonathan Taylor, and Devontae Adams. All right. So do you know who would be an awesome wide receiver for you to try to get? And you're going to have to do it before tonight. But I think Zay Flowers is just an incredible buy low opportunity. Dwayne talked about him in the utilization report. His target share is massive. If we go look at the season-long stats for target share at wide receiver, you can see here Zay Flowers is top 7 in the league. This is the top 7 for target share. JSN, Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson, Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra, and Zay Flowers. You get Lamar Jackson back. No one else is really stepping up in that offense. The matchups are going to be awesome going forward. They get 3 of the worst teams in football over the next few weeks. I think putting in an offer for Zay Flower would be very smart because after tonight, they get the Vikings, which isn't the easiest matchup, but it's not bad. Could be a shootout in the dome there. They play the Browns, the Jets, the Bengals. So yeah, I think Zay Flowers is about to pop off. I would go ahead and put in an offer for him. All right, so we know we're going to get a low-owned Bills wide receiver with our last pick. That means we're going to have a running back and tight end here. Let's play this as a bit of a game stack. Let's again we'll grab Travis Kelce as our tight end as a bring back, and then we'll grab our running back here. I don't think I want to do Jaylen Warren and Jonathan Taylor in the same game. Let's go ahead and do DeAndre Swift. We'll do DeAndre Swift here. I wrote about this in my column, but the Bengals here, guys, look at these. Look at the fantasy boost that they're giving up to each position. They give the second biggest fantasy boost to opposing quarterbacks, 4.3. They give the biggest fantasy boost to opposing running backs, 11.2. And they give up the most rush yards, 132.1 yards per game. They give up the 9th biggest fantasy boost to opposing wide receivers. And then they give up the biggest fantasy boost to opposing tight ends, 8.1. That's where some of that love was coming from. The next closest fantasy boost for a defense to opposing tight ends is 3.8. So this Bengals team is catastrophically bad. I really want to be grabbing shares of Swift and Adunze, obviously, but even getting to some Caleb, getting to some Loveland this week. I do want to just real quick look at the Bills' utilization at wide receiver. It's so unfortunate because Keon Coleman started the season really hot and has just kind of cooled off completely. He had a 95 utilization score in week 1, and now he's been down here at 46 and 39. So he's really tailed off here. I mean, still a 17% target share last week, which isn't bad. But what we saw here was Shakir, who actually ran less routes than Keon Coleman last week, 64 to 76, and yet his target share was awesome. 30% of the targets, 44% targets per route run, much better utilization score here of 65. Palmer still hurt. Curtis Samuel, not a factor. Elijah Moore, a little bit more of a factor, 52% of the snaps and 17% of the targets. But it really is Shakir in this offense right now. So I think if this game goes nuts, Khalil Shakir is probably going to be the one having a big game here. So he's going to be our final selection, and he fulfills our prompt here of a 100% drafted quarterback with a sub 30% pass catcher. And I do like getting the game stack here in this one. If the Bills are getting pushed, the Chiefs are certainly scoring points here as well. So I won't always be forcing a stack, but when I look at a game like this that does have this 52.5 point total, it's certainly one where you can be open to stacking it both ways. So this final team, Allen to Shakir with the Kelsey bringback, Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift at running back, and then Devontae Adams, our other wide receiver play. I think we got time for one more draft here. Appreciate everyone hanging out, especially everybody new over on Twitter today. If you guys are watching on Twitter, come check us out on YouTube here, the Fantasy Life YouTube channel, multiple shows a week, everything from utilization, waivers, buy low, all of the good stuff that you need to get ready for both season long and DFS. And funny enough, our next prompt is one we just did, but we'll do it again here, a skinny stack plus a bring back. So let's find another game environment that we would like to skinny stack and bring it back with. Yeah, Yosh says first game all year that I think I've liked the bring back, that Bills Chiefs. Yeah, you get these games with the heavyweights. It's Bills, Chiefs, Ravens, Eagles, and these really well-rounded teams. And the games can certainly go one of two directions, where it's more smash mouth, they slow it down, good defense, long drives, or they just go nutty and you get the shootout games. And we've seen over the years, these Bills and Chiefs games get absolutely crazy. So yeah, there's certainly scenarios where it's, 37-30 and you want 3 to 4 pieces in it. All right, we have the 1-4 here. Yeah, Yosh saying Cincy, Chicago, if you're doing a different game. I do think it's a good place to start if you're trying to think which games could I do a bring back in. I do think it would be the 3 with a total over 50. So I do think you could do Colts. I think Daniel Jones to Warren with a Jalen Warren or Metcalf bring back would be fine. Bears, Bengals for sure. I think it would be Caleb to Rome with a Chase or either Chase bring back would probably be the way to do that. I'm not opposed to doing it with the Giants. I think you could do something like Dart to man, actually it's a little tougher. You do like Dart to Wandell with a Kittle bring back, but that is a little thin. And I did just do the Lawrence to Travis Hunter with the Brock Bowers, but I agree. I think ideally we do it with Chicago and Cincy here. I think Minnesota, Detroit would be one that I would entertain as well. Like if you could do Amon-Ra with either Jefferson or Addison and then get Goff, it's kind of the same thesis to a few weeks ago when the Vikings played the Eagles, and you just have so many explosive wide receivers in that game. You have obviously Jefferson, Addison in that game. You have Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, and you say, what happens if these guys just get loose for big plays? And we're going back and forth there. But let's grab Jamar Chase here. I've been taking Puka over and over. I will finally acquiesce and stop clicking Puka. Let's do Jamar Chase, and maybe we can set up that Rome and Caleb stack. But I think what I would ideally like to do is grab Amon-Ra St. Brown and give myself a second out. Obviously, that would lead to a 3 wide receiver build with either Rome or Addison. But I think that might be a way that I could get a really clean quarterback stack with a bring back. But man, now Rashee Rice comes back here to pick 9. I'm not going to be able to get Rice with Chase that often, I imagine. Should we make this work? Amon-Ra's gone. Let's do this. Yeah, let's grab Rashee Rice. Maybe there's a small chance Mahomes would fall. Very unlikely. This will probably be my 1, 3 wide receiver build here. That's true. Swift as the bring back. I don't know why I was pigeonholing myself into a wide receiver bring back. That's a good call. Frozen Gaming, would you trade Kyren, Rashee Rice, and Diggs for Kenneth Walker, London, and Amon-Ra? No. I mean, Rice is comparable with Amon-Ra. Kyren's way better than Walker. Yes, London is a slight upgrade on Diggs, but it's not enough for me. I think with Kyren, you have a locked and loaded RB2, back end RB1. Rashee Rice is probably like a top 5 play rest of season. Yeah, I don't think there's any need to do that. Diggs just hasn't shown a ton, but the London upgrade just isn't enough for me to go down from Kyren to Walker right now. All right, let's see here. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and grab. Does this all come crumbling down if I don't? No, I'll have 2 options at it. I'm going to go Kyren here, and then we can get either Swift or Rome with the next pick. I think I might go Rome here. And so Rome does have the Q tag. But if I have to swap from Rome and I just swap him to a running back, that's not a big deal. And this might be one of those situations where I'm willing to embrace a 3 wide receiver build. Swift has the explosive ability to speed up a game, but if this game really gets cooking from a big play perspective, I like how the Rome and Jamar Chase stuff works in concert with each other. And we almost saw it last week. I mean, Rome gets to 120 yards, but with Snoop Huntley, that game just couldn't really shoot out. But let's do that. We don't often do the 3 wide receiver builds. I think in the context of this prompt, it's a good opportunity to do so. So we got Kyren as our 1 running back. We get a Chase Rome mini that we're going to complete with a quarterback stack. We have Rashee Rice, and then we'll just have to figure out our tight end play here. We can probably play tight end pretty straight just because Caleb is going to be very unique at quarterback with an ADP of 34.9. He's going to have a sub 30% draft rate here. I should also mention, if you guys want to watch me draft more Battle Royale teams today, I'll be live at 3 p.m. Eastern on my YouTube channel, the Peter Overzet YouTube channel. I do a show called the Battle Royale Bash, where I bring up YouTube members onto the stream and draft teams with me. It's fun to beat various members from the community and also get some ideas flowing as well. Let's see. I guess we're going to do George Kittle again. I can't stop clicking George Kittle at pick 28. I mean, this is a guy who, when all things are clicking, he's a top 15 pick each week, easily in the conversation for tight end 1 overall, anytime he's on the slate. So if you're going to give him to me at 28, I'm going to do it over and over again. I really like the upside of this lineup here. I just feel like it tells a really clear story. Rashee Rice alpha game, George Kittle alpha game, Kyren Williams gets 2 touchdowns versus a hapless Saints team as they cruise. And then we get this low-owned game stack really cooking. Caleb Williams to Rome Odunze and Jamar Chase on the bring back. Really, the only question on this one for me is I just really want to make sure that Joe Flacco's playing. I think with Joe Flacco, this game can really pop, and without him, I have concerns about it sputtering out. So we are going to be able to get him here. I also want to mention why we're here, guys. This comment offer, I've mentioned it on a few previous shows. It is going to be expiring in 3 days. And this offer sounds too good to be true. It really is as simple as you can get Fantasy Life Plus for a year. So all the stuff you see me pulling up, Fantasy Life utilization, the DVP stuff, defense first position, all of the league sync stuff, the 2026 draft kit, all of that content next year. You can get it all for free, literally just by downloading the Comet browser. So instructions are right here. If you just search fantasylife.com/Comet, or you even just go to the front page of the website, you will see the offer up there. I think mine isn't showing because I've been shown it a million times, but go to fantasylife.com/Comet. You download the browser. That's literally all you have to do. And then you'll follow instructions here on how to redeem it. Get Fantasy Life Plus for an entire year. Take advantage of Perplexity subsidizing your Fantasy Life Plus subscription. Here's this final team. We do get Caleb Williams. I really like this one. Caleb to Rome, Jamar Chase, bring back Kyron, Rashee Rice, and George Kittle. I will go ahead and answer one more question on my way out the door. Half point PPR. I have Bowers and Gadsden. Congratulations. Would you try to move Gadsden plus Knight for Tracy or a similar running back tier? I think I'd want a little bit more just because Gadsden is going to be a top 6 or 7, and Knight and Tracy, I do prefer Tracy to Knight, but Tracy not so much so that I'm also willing to give up Gadsden. I would go ahead and look at our rest of season rankings at Fantasy Life when looking for something like this. And I'll go ahead and filter for running back for you. And I'll tell you the tier I would be looking to get into for a move like that. I think I'd want to be more up in this, like buying low on a guy like Bucky Irving coming back, maybe Derrick Henry now getting Lamar. I feel like otherwise I would just be kind of holding in that range. Tracy's just not quite enough. See if you can get Swift. See if you can get Warren. Those would be a couple other guys. I would just shoot a little bit higher there than Tracy. All right, guys, I appreciate you. We'll be back here. Week 10 edition will be next Thursday, same time, 12 p.m. Eastern. If you are watching on X, make sure you guys head over to the Fantasy Life YouTube channel. Good luck in week 9. And I should also mention every single Monday morning on my YouTube channel, I review the Battle Royale slate. So I look at the winning teams, talk through how I did, look at a bunch of different contests and see how winning teams were created for that given week. So make sure you guys tune into that. It's called the Portfolio Review every Monday on my YouTube channel. Otherwise, we'll catch you next time here for the DFS Jam. Peace.